Welcome back to the beautiful city of Barcelona here in Spain for Pro Tour, The Lord of the Rings. It is our pleasure to be welcoming you into the beautiful Spanish sunshine as we explore not just this modern format, but this incredible city, Corey. It's been great to see a bit of Barcelona here in the summertime. But right now, we are all business on our tournament floor as we head in to our fourth and final quarterfinal in our top 8 today. Corey, we have 3 semi-finalists ready to go, but they need one final fourth one. And it's going to be one of these two blokes here, Jake Beardsley versus Marco Del Pivo. Why don't you remind us some of the stuff that we've seen in the bracket today already, Corey?
Yeah, so far we have seen Tron do some absolute damage to both Rhino decks here at the bottom, getting a nice semifinals here for a Tron Mirror, and then Dominic Harvey taking down Javier Dominguez with Amulet Titan like we just saw. So it's going to be Tron on one side of the bracket, and then it's going to be 2 non-Tron decks to face the powerful Urza lands in the finals.
So Harvey still needs an opponent here. The Master of Amulet Titan will be looking to either play Beardsley here, Jake Beardsley on Rakdos Evoke, or Marco Del Pivo on Temur Rhinos. Both of these players getting ready to get underway with our fourth quarter final here. And both of these decks have done reasonably well. I think with Rakdos Evoke, it was more a situation of just pure numbers. It was the most played deck in the tournament, so unsurprising to see it sneak into the top 8. But Rhinos was a different story. This deck was looking really impressive.
Exactly. Rhinos so far and Tron were the decks of the tournament. Yeah, like you were saying, Rakdos Evoke was the sheer numbers. So basically this deck didn't have the best, results so far, but...
And we're getting griefed here. Beardsley's Beardsley's giving us the grief treatment here. Marco Del Pivo has both Force of Negation and Shardless Agent stripped from his hand as grief is evoked for free for 0 mana with the Orcish Bowmasters, and then a Feign Death in response to the Evoke trigger means that it can come back. And, Corey, a really key interaction there with the timing of the Feign Death. Talk to us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the timing of the Feign Death, you can stack it where there'll be 2 triggers on the stack. You put the Evoke one kind of at the bottom so that you get to take a card first. You get to take that Force of Negation, so then the way is clear to then cast Feign Death. If you do it the other way around, you'd have to Feign Death with the discard on the stack. You could then force that, and it wouldn't go so well.
So really important to stack those triggers correctly. You want to stack the Evoke trigger on the bottom to make sure that the discard effect resolves before the Evoke effect, so you can remove something like a Lightning Bolt, a Force of Negation, or what have you.
Exactly.
Not that a Lightning Bolt is going to be relevant here, but of course, we move now to Jake Beardsley's second turn, where he has a 4/3 Menace. That has already stripped 2 cards out of the hand of Marco Del Pivo. Is he advantaged in this situation, Corey, would you say?
I would say a little advantage, but the one thing that Temur Rhinos has going on for them is you can't Thoughtseize the top of the deck, and the top decks are very big. So if you can top deck Shardless Agent, all of a sudden that advantage bar is swinging way back in favor of Marco.
Having 1 4/3 Menace is pretty good, but having 2 4/4 Tramplers is even better.
And a 2/2, yep.
And that's what Del Pivo is going to be able to do if he finds... not even Shardless Agent. Violent Outburst can also do the job at instant speed. Douthie Voidwalker, the play here for Beardsley, does that have any relevance or impact in this game?
Not really. It just attacks for a lot, but that is kind of the only application. It's going to create a big clock. Yeah, that's really about it. Maybe if you can have your opponent discard Force of Negation, then you could Force of Negation your opponent's Rhinos. So we have always been saying maybe Douthie Voidwalker is not ideal in this matchup, but there's always outside applications when you can play with your opponent's cards.
That's true, and at the end of the day, it is just a 3-mana 3/2 with a great evasive ability. Here, however, is a 3-mana 2/2 with a completely different ability that is going to change this game, turn it on its head. Shardless Agent cascading into Crashing Footfalls means that Marco Del Pivo, for the bargain basement price of 3 mana, is putting 10 power into play.
Yep, absolutely pretty strong, and you do got to just go through all the motions here to cast it. These then get shuffled. Yeah.
Beardsley not forgetting that trigger. He said, well, the Crashing Footfalls will be exiled with a Void counter. He's very quick to point that one out. I can't imagine anyone would ever forget that trigger when they're controlling a Douthie Voidwalker, though. You're exiling every card with Void counters, don't you worry about it.
Exactly.
You're getting that value.
Absolutely. And a quick shout-out to Jake from Roanoke, my hometown as well here, and just beat me in an RCQ like a month and a half ago. He's a great player.
He must have. And he beat you. He must be a great player.
Well,
wow.
no, that
Oh,
was the
my
easy
goodness.
part. Great
Oh, my
player
goodness.
for this, yeah.
No, well done, Jake. Well done, Marco. And well done to all of our top 8, of course. An incredible achievement for all of them. Even the people bowing out in the quarters can be very proud of themselves for their performances across the weekend.
Nothing like adding a 1 to the top finish margin here when you get to top 8 on the biggest stage. You know, there's nothing like it.
We don't have bottles of water for you.
So,
However, if you have
the
water,
Shardless
we're
Agent
happy to
resolves
refill it.
after the crashing footfalls. Got a nice big board here for Del Pivo. Let's not forget, however, I believe that Douthie Voidwalker can cast the crashing footfalls once it's Jake Beardsley's turn, so I think he can actually add a bunch of power to the board as well.
I believe so as well, yeah.
Douthie Voidwalker has created a fair few very interesting rules questions for us, Corey, as we have cast these matches throughout the weekend. We've seen Douthie Voidwalker cast multiple copies of Worm Coil Engine. We've seen Khan the Great create a pilfered by cards like Ragavan. We've seen all sorts of nonsense taking place throughout our tournament this weekend. As I mentioned before, do yourself a favor, go back and watch the VODs when you get the chance after this top 8 has concluded, because lots of ridiculous games.
Second main phase.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're going to see Beardsley here.
Sacrifice Douthie Voidwalker, cast Crashing Footfalls without paying its mana cost.
So there you go.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have a mana cost, so that's why it's a kind of a strange interaction. But yeah, can still cast that, can cast anything off of it.
Yep.
We've pointed out a couple of times, timing restrictions apply to the card that you cast. It says it's because it says you may play the card, not that you cast it, you may play it, which means the timing restrictions apply, so you can't just flash in a Crashing Footfalls, as it were. So now Del Pivo is the one who has to deal with 2 Trampling Rhinos. He's got some more on the way. The Crashing Footfalls that has been suspended will come back next turn.
I like this from Jake, not blocking here. We see a Fury in hand already.
Bowmasters.
So if you're able to find another red card and a Feying Death, you can then just deal with your opponent's battlefield instead of trading.
And now Del Pivo is down to just 10 life after this Orcish Bowmaster's come down. So this is looking a little dicey here for the Italian. That attack, obviously, he wants to put pressure on, make sure that Beardsley is put under the gun. But now it's Beardsley's turn, I should say, to turn around and say, well, mate, you're on 10 life. I'm gonna punish you to the max here.
Yeah, it leads me to believe that there's a Violent Outburst in hand from Marco. Otherwise, I agree. I think this seems slightly strange, especially when you have Crashing Footfalls coming off suspend next turn.
Yeah.
The only thing I would want to do if I was in Marco's spot is just stay alive till that point.
Now, unusually, when it comes to suspend, right? So the suspend mechanic has a weird thing where if you suspend a creature and it resolves, it comes into play through the suspend mechanic. It gains haste, but these Rhinos don't.
Yeah, that's
They don't gain haste. So it means that you play the card resolves and they can't attack that turn.
Yes.
So that does make a bit of a difference here. But we're seeing now Thoughtseize and in response Fire Ice to tap down one of the Rhinos. So that shows that Del Pivo had at least a little bit of a defensive option.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And we saw the reveal to the hand, just a Crashing Footfall and a land.
Whatever, that's sitting in the hand. That's even if he's suspended, that's not resolving for 10,000 years.
Your last
So
card
whatever.
was, it was a land of some. Okay, Misty, thank you.
Both players communicating very well exactly what's going on in the game. This is a huge moment and the biggest moment, assuredly, in both of their Magic careers.
Yeah, so far. So far. Orcish Bowmasters, another trigger for that. And we see the Orc
6.
army tick up to 3.
Yep.
And, to 2, I should say.
Yep.
And a trade with the Crashing Footfalls. That Orcish Bowmasters trigger coming about because of the draw a card off of the ice.
And now 2 more Rhinos coming into play, putting the slight advantage back to Marco. And now, one thing of note, that is 3 Rhinos used already. So only 1 more available. This is one of those matchups where Jake can really deal with all of the Rhinos. With Fury Fang Death, that deals with 2 of them straight away. These type of things can really run Marco through all the Rhinos.
We do see Temur Rhinos now, though, these days having something of a backup plan. Murktide Regents in Marco Del Pivo's list, 2 of that card. And Fury, in addition to 4 copies of Subtlety. So, in the past, I would have characterized the Temur Rhinos deck as a bit of a glass cannon. It had 1 trick and it did it very well, but if you didn't win with the Rhinos, you were kind of trying to attack with a Brazen Borrower, essentially.
Yeah.
Which didn't always get there, but now a card like Murktide Regent, when you're filling your bin with these instant and sorceries, can close a game out on its own.
Absolutely. Yep, you see that, and it doesn't get hit by the Cascade rule, of course. You cast it for 2 mana most of the time, but it is a 7 mana spell. We've seen Questing Beast in those spots here from
I'll be at
Kai
6.
Buddha and team.
Questing Beast really good against the One Ring's protection ability. Not relevant right now, of course. But it's back to Beardsley after this Rhino tramples in for 4.
So Marco did attack with one of these creatures, and that means if Jake has a red card for Fury off the top, that is a lethal attack
I've got
by
5
exactly,
Correct.
unless Marco has anything. So once again, I got to think that Marco has something. Otherwise, this is a bit of a risky attack because it's not just playing around a Fury. I mean, there's Fatal Push, there's Terminate. There's plenty of things that Jake could have to deal with one of these Rhinos.
Well, let's see what Beardsley can bring to bear here. Marco Del Pivo on just 5 life, 2 Rhinos, and an Orcish Bowmaster for the American. Is he going to be able to knock Marco Del Pivo out in this game? Number 1, using a stolen copy of Crashing Footfalls.
Hey, that was a Dothy up the top. That is no way to present lethal for Jake. So now Marco will be able to attack for 12 on the crackback.
And if he has something like another Fire Ice here to tap down a blocker, don't forget, all these Rhinos have trample. This is 12 trampling damage coming across to an opponent who's on just 5. Oh, here's the attack from Beardsley. He's presenting lethal. Del Pivo has to respond.
Wow, this is interesting because as it stands, Jake does not have really anything to do if you block Rhino and then block Bowmaster here. Go to 1, but of course it's risky. Like, there's lightning bolts, there's everything. So Jake's saying, I'm trying to force you to block Rhino to Rhino, or I could kill you. But the flip side, maybe you make this attack to incentivize that exact same thing.
Yeah.
So this is a mind game right here because Jake has no way to stop Marco from just attacking for 8 next turn. GG.
Feign Death, of course, the other option on the Orcish Bowmasters. If we block the Orcish Bowmaster and it dies with a Feign Death, it comes back and pings for the final point of damage.
I agree. I just don't think that's in hand, but that could be another card to play around. I think it's Grief, Dothy, Voidwalker, Fury.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I could have saw that incorrectly.
Let's find out. Del Pivo thinking very carefully about how he wants to play this.
Yeah.
Now,
it's
he
really
doesn't
tricky.
have Lightning Bolts in his deck. He does have Fire Ice.
Yep.
Okay, no effects.
And makes the block.
4.
So they trade off. 1 damage gets through with the Orcish Bowmasters.
Now you can play Dothy.
Now Douthie Voidwalker the play here for Beardsley. Back over to Del Pivo. I don't think those life totals are correct. I think it's the other way around.
I think so, yeah. Yep.
Yep.
I think Jake should be at 5. Marco should be at 4.
That's my understanding.
Because, yeah, otherwise this wouldn't make sense,
Yeah.
this attack.
So now the Rhino is coming in here.
I'm at 1.
And
Yep.
Beardsley goes to 1. So, yeah, that is confirmation. Those life totals were... is it 1 to 4?
Yeah.
It should be...
Okay, all right. It's 1 to 4. All right. Both of the players have that on their sheets.
Douthie Voidwalker.
Yeah, 1 to 4 should be
4,
correct,
correct.
but Marco should have 4.
Exile.
Yes,
Clear
yeah.
the Voidwalker.
The life totals are the wrong way around on the screen.
Yes.
All right.
This attack from Jake last turn was legendary because Jake just allowed himself to untap when there was no way for him to untap. Awesome stuff.
So, once again, the Douthie Voidwalker has a Crashing Footfalls underneath it.
And top deck Fang Death.
Undying Malice Bowmasters.
Or, yeah, one of the effects.
Yeah. That's a concession.
And Beardsley can...
Okay. Damage, you'll go to 1. Trigger Bowmasters target you. Okay.
And there's the final 1 point of damage coming across with the Bowmasters.
Wow.
Because the Douthie Voidwalker got in for 3, that 1 point of damage from the Bowmasters was enough after it came back onto the battlefield with the Undying Malice. Beardsley stitching together lethal, those last 4 points of damage. We do apologize that the life totals were mixed up there, but at the end of the day, Jake Beardsley managing to pull together a win. That one was right down to the wire.
Stole that one. I think that is the best way to put that. Jake made that incredibly confident attack when didn't have the goods to back it up and really got
I'll be at
paid
18.
off there.
I'll take
Nice
your
attack from
outburst.
Jake.
You've got
Opening things up with a
Orion,
Thought Seize now, which is going to take care
Foothills,
of
Island,
the
and
Violent Outburst, leaving Del Pivo really with 2/3 and not much.
Yeah, but I mean, Crashing Footfalls being at 3 here, you already just have that. That's why it's actually pretty nice to have that in the opener against this deck because you just automatically will be like, all right, do some stuff for a couple of turns. I will get Rhinos. And that's not a guarantee when you just have 3 drops that would get you Rhinos against this Rakdos.
We've been saying all weekend, you can't Thought Seize the top of the deck. You also can't Thought Seize the Exile Zone.
That is very true.
You can't Thought Seize a card that's been suspended. So
high-level analysis right there.
I take your point. It feels really bad. I've played a bunch of Temur Riders, and it feels bad to suspend most times. Like, why is this card in my opener? But in this situation, I think it's actually better than it looks.
Yeah, there's some matchups, most of the time mid-range matchups, where it's actually pretty good, especially with Thoughtseize. It can be really bad against combo-style decks, and as well as Teferi time Raveler decks.
I was say any deck that has Chalice, counter spells, Teferi, anything that just can make the 5 turns you dumped into this Crashing Footfalls feel like an eternity that you did nothing.
And speaking of Teferi, it's pretty shocking that we did not have a single copy in this top 8.
No, particularly considering how well it was positioned against all of the Cascade decks.
Exactly. 4-color, not really having a good weekend.
What happened? What happened to Omnath?
They didn't draw enough of them.
You're good to
Didn't
go
draw
once
enough.
you're good to go once the Void Walker's in. Yeah.
All right, Void Walker comes into play. Crashing Footfalls down to 2. Back over to Del Pivo.
All that stuff was in response to the Dothy Voidwalker, just so Voidwalker doesn't have the option of, let's say, draw 3 cards for free.
Oh, we saw Beardsley slamming those Void counters down.
Yeah.
Sure, that'll be exiled.
And the Dead and Gone is exiled with a Void counter.
There's those interactions where if you kill the Dothy, it still goes to the exile with the Void counter. Something that we all understand perfectly.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly why.
If you're sitting there wondering about this replacement effect or which card goes where, oh my goodness, you are certainly in the minority, Corey. Imagine not understanding deeply complex rules interactions in Magic the Gathering.
Honestly, it's so easy. I feel like we don't even need to explain it into detail.
No,
No.
Let's not disrespect the viewer's understanding of these complex rules interactions by explaining something. No, look, we don't know. That's why judges are there.
Yeah.
Fable of the Mirror Breaker coming down now for Jake Beardsley. Makes a Goblin. This is a card that's also had a pretty quiet weekend.
Murktide, yeah. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Fable the Mirror Breaker?
Fable, Murktide, all of these cards have had a pretty quiet weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Murktide not necessarily in the namesake deck. Is it Murktide? That had a very quiet weekend as well.
Yeah, didn't really get any new cards from the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth.
Yeah.
But here, as a 5/5 flyer on turn 4, I don't think you're too unhappy about that.
Yeah, not bad at all. And one thing that does happen is, when an instant or sorcery leaves your graveyard, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So if you get this down early and then you're able to amass a graveyard again and play second Murktide, it will boost this one as well. An interaction we're not going to see a lot of, especially with only 2 Murktides in the main deck, but it can come up.
Yep, worth raising for sure here. And probably the other thing worth raising is that this is a very quick clock here for Beardsley. Although the deck does have a lot of removal, Rakdos Evoke, it's able to deal. Well, having said that, 5 toughness, the magic number against an opposing Fury.
Yep, absolutely. Fury not doing a great job. Terminate if it's left in the deck, which it's reasonable. It deals with half of Rhinos. That's not an ideal rate to deal with a 0 mana spell, to jump through some hoops, to only deal with half of it.
Yeah, I'll be at 13.
Okay, Jake takes 5 here from Marco's copy of Murktide Regent. And these Rhinos have come into play, of course, off of that Au Natural suspended Crashing Footfalls, Magic as Garfield intended.
The hard way, yep.
Cast Orcish Bowmasters. Okay. Trigger target you.
Trigger target you, and you can tell just the proficiency that Jake has with this deck. Has been playing this deck a lot, and just make sure to announce all the triggers.
Very, very clear communicator.
Not make any mistakes, and yeah, exactly, very clear communicator.
And we've seen issues at the highest level of Magic because of something as simple as basic player communication. Jake is not about to fall into that pitfall.
No, absolutely. And I mean, this is just great to be able to get in these really good habits, even if it's something as easy as Bowmaster, for sure, I'm going to target you. We see, like, Javier and Dom, they're basically not even telling each other what they're doing. They're playing their spell.
Right?
Yeah.
Reminds me of Reed Duke. Reed's another really clear communicator when it comes to the resolution of triggers, maintaining game state, all that sort of stuff. So amongst the best players in the world. Oh, Croxy, here we go. Is a name I've not heard in a long time. Check this guy out.
Trigger.
All right, Croxy coming in, forcing the discard. There goes 3 damage. Even if the land didn't go to the graveyard or anything because of Dothy, it still will be the 3 damage here, and that'll be poised
Undying
to.
Malice targeting my Douthie.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
looks like it's Rhinos with buyback time.
Yeah, it looks like it because the Feigned Death or the Undying Malice on the Douthie Voidwalker in
Trigger
response
Orcish
to,
Bowmasters. Yeah.
well,
You'll be at
before, I should
12,
say,
and
before
a counter.
exiling, sacrificing it.
And this is a pretty nice play here from Jake because even if there is a removal spell
gonna
like
judge
fire or
real
something,
quick.
you can
With
just
Dead and
sacrifice
Gone,
it
am I allowed
in
to cast either
response.
half of the spell?
Okay, we're checking what happens here with Dead Gone.
Yeah, because you can sacrifice Dothy in response, but it's still
Sacrifice the
timing
Douthie
rules.
Voidwalker, trigger the Undying Malice on the Voidwalker, and I'm going to go ahead and choose Crashing Footfalls.
We don't really need to be here, Corey.
No, yeah.
We actually don't really need to be here.
This will come back
Beardsley's doing
before
our
the
job for us.
Footfalls
That's
result.
great.
We'll just hype up Jake
We
and
can
we'll
just
let him.
chill,
Yeah.
man. We can just chill, and Jake's taking care
has
of business from the
counter on
feature
it.
match area here.
And here is the spicy thing that Jake's thinking in his head and probably doesn't want to say this out loud.
Yeah.
That crushing footfall goes back to the zone, and Dothy Voidwalker's still in play.
Because there is still the Voidwalker that's come back now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because how it works, the Undying Malice will trigger as the Crashing Footfall's on the stack. So Dothy will come into play, then Crashing Footfall resolves, the Dothy sees it go, they can cast it again next turn.
And this would happen if there were two Douthie Voidwalkers in play as well. You sacrifice one,
Yeah.
the second one exiles the card that it just cast, and oh my
Exactly.
goodness.
But it would not work if there was only one,
Okay.
because then it would
7.
go to the actual graveyard type of thing.
Yep. And I think we're halfway towards discovering perpetual motion with that line. All right, Beseju going after the Kiki Jiki here after the dust has settled on those Rhinos crashing into each other. Beseju also going to the exile zone with a void counter on it. And another really important thing to note here, with some cards, Oblivion Ring, Fiend Hunter, some cards that exile other cards, they're often attached to them.
Yep.
Douthie Voidwalker does not follow the same rules. You don't exile cards with a specific Douthie Voidwalker. If you play a different one, or Blink one, or Feigned Death one, or whatever, it can cast any other card that has a Void counter on it in your opponent's exile zone.
Yep, absolutely.
So if you kill a Voidwalker on turn 2 after it's exiled something and they play one 10 turns later,
Land
those
for-
Void counters are still good to go.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll see what we're going to do now.
Yeah.
Here's a second.
I'm going to throw my Blood Crypt in my lap.
And announces that as well. Announces the Blood Crypt
Exile
entering the
beast
lap
points
zone
to
very
Steam
briefly before it's retrieved and put back
You'll
onto
be
the
at
battlefield.
9 off the trigger.
And is that Crocs are being escaped from the graveyard?
sure is.
Sacrifice
So
this
Crocs is
Douthie
coming back?
Voidwalker. I'm going to
Uh-oh.
Is this
cast
gone?
your Gone, bouncing your Murktide Regent. It'll
Yep.
go back to exile from the other Voidwalker.
And wow, yeah, that was the question asked. Can you cast
That's a
either
concession.
side?
And now with the Murktide region out of the way, Marco Del Pivo recognizes that he doesn't have a chance against this board state that Jake Beardsley has built up. And so now Jake Beardsley just one game away from a semi-final berth here at Pro Tour, the Lord of the Rings. Coming to you from Spain, Barcelona, where we're hanging out today. Corey, it's great to have you along. Thanks for joining us here on Pro Tour Sunday. Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer.
Haven't been seeing a lot of that on turn
No.
one, but this is one of those matchups, play or draw. It's pretty good against Rhinos because there's nothing like Ren and 6, Orcish Bowmaster, something like that to deal with it and leave material on the battlefield. Here, if Marco wants to deal with this, it's going to have to be with fire, which I think I did just see in the hand. You got to actually one-for-one yourself.
There is the fire, but before we move on, Corey, a quick update on the sideboarding from both these players.
Okay.
Of course, sideboarding takes place after game 2, unusually, in our top 8 because it's a best of 5
Yes.
matches here. So I can tell you that Marco has taken out 2 Force of Negation, 2 Mystical Dispute, 1 Shardless Agent, 1 Crashing Footfalls, and a Gemstone Caverns.
Okay.
And he's brought in 4 copies of Endurance,
It's a pretty good one.
in addition to 2 Fury and a Beseju.
Chalice on 0.
Jake, on the other hand, has taken out 3 copies of Fable, a copy of Blood Moon, and all 4 copies of Bowmasters. Not a whole lot of targets for that 1 damage there.
Makes sense.
And brought in 2 Sheoldred, 2 Engineered Explosives, 1 Terminate. I like all those. But the heavy hitter, Chalice of the Void.
And we see it right now. The Ragavan may have died, but we have Dothy here, which we see that Lauren's revealed being
You're playing
put
your turn.
to the void counter area, I guess you could say. And now Jake
Sent to the Void Zone.
sent to the void, yeah. Now with Chalice as well, so now Marco just has to deal with Chalice before even getting Rhinos on the battlefield. So has to jump through hoops just to do what Marco's deck does, and it's not even amazing right now.
What are your thoughts on taking out a copy of the Agent, taking out a copy of the Footfalls?
That is really interesting to me. You know, Endurance is just another threat, so you're trying to keep your threat count about the same. But Endurance isn't even absolutely amazing here. You know, shutting off Kroxa, which was good in the last game. That's
Just a
okay,
one-off,
but
though. You can't build your entire board plan around that.
yeah, and like you can kind of sneak block stuff, which is fine. You know, like flash in, block a Ragavan, but Endurance really isn't how amazing it would be against, let's say, like Living End,
Like,
for instance.
You're two-for-1ing yourself to flash in the Endurance in response to the Feign Death Evoke trick, right?
Yeah.
That's not even that. It's okay.
Honestly, what I think Endurance is used for most is to Endurance yourself to put those Crashing Footfalls back into the library and then start casting
In that case,
again.
don't take one out.
Well, I mean, essentially, Marco has
18.
added now has seven Crashing
what,
Footfalls
Oh.
in a weird kind of way.
Okay. All right. Look, he's the one playing in the Pro Tour, the top 8. I'm not going to question it too hard,
Exactly.
but we can have a look now at the fact that this Chalice of the Void is definitely hamstringing Marco Del Pivo's primary game plan. But again, a diversity of
Got me at
threats,
18, you at
Murktide
15.
Regent,
Yep.
Endurance Fury as well coming out of the board.
Absolutely. Looks like I caught a glimpse of Marco's hand. I did see at least one, maybe two Endurances and a Subtlety, I believe.
Well, the Endurance can be hard cast now. Just 3 mana, the cheapest
I'll
of
be at
all of
17.
the indications.
And now Jake is one card away in Graveyard if you sacrifice Douthie to cast Lauren Revealed, for
4
instance.
cards.
So now Marco
5
will
cards.
have to be, on alert to make sure that this Kroxa doesn't come back. Because if it goes on the stack, it doesn't matter how many Endurances you have, you're going to be sad.
Grief.
All right, here's a Grief. Also hard cast now for
Yep.
4 mana. And let's see what Del Pivo's response to this is, if any. You said he's got an Endurance in hand?
2 Endurance, Subtlety, Dead Gone is what I saw. So I think you just have to be like, all right, here you go. Because you have 2 Endurances,
Yeah.
you still, if one gets taken, you get to play the other. But Marco's hand is not great or well set up against this.
I guess the other thing that Marco's thinking about here is whatever gets discarded by the Fury hits the Void zone, the exile zone with a Void counter on it as well. So it's not just, it's not as simple as, I lose this card, oh, no, boohoo,
Yeah.
woe is me, but it's also
Jake can cast it.
effectively
Yeah.
giving it to your opponent. Yeah, kind of weirdly putting it in their hand. Double Endurance, Subtlety, Dead and Gone, Eagle Eye, Baumeister with the exactly correct estimation of what's in hand.
You just heard Jake say, huh, neat.
Again,
Gotta love Jake's commentary.
We don't really need to be here.
We got to get him in the booth.
Well, I think for his sake, he won't be hoping to be commentating a
Good
Pro Tour
point.
top 8. He'll be hoping to be the commentatee, not the commentator.
Good point, good point. And I did just get a quick glance at Jake's hand, and I think I saw Chalice 2.
You've got Endurance.
You can't really play Chalice number 2 on 0. You'll learn exactly the hard way one time, and then you'll never make that mistake again.
You can.
As I have done.
You can do it.
It's a legal play.
You can do it.
Yeah, but then
Not
you
us.
are forced to counter it. Can't miss that Chalice
No.
trigger on your own.
No. Oh, but Corey,
Down.
what if you want an artifact
be
in
at
your
12.
graveyard for
go ahead.
Delirium? Then it might actually be the correct play.
Honestly, there's a Kroxa there, so if the Endurances weren't there, that could be
We did it.
a smart answer
We
there,
did it,
but-
everyone. We did it. We found a situation where it is a correct play to play Chalice into your own Chalice.
There we go.
Endurance comes down, shuffles away, or tucks away Beardsley's
Yep.
graveyard here,
Not the
and a
Thoughtseize
dead
bug.
gone.
Yeah, that's fine.
The
This will be
Thoughtseize
an
bug
exile-
being
this will be
declared.
dead,
Oh
I'll
dear,
be
all
at
too
14.
familiar for long-time
Drop.
MTGO grinders.
There you go.
All right, back over now to
Grief.
Beardsley. There is a
Will be
Chalice in
9.
hand for him. Grief
Cliff
cracks
scope.
in for another 4. Del Pivo down to 9.
So that was a big top deck. Dead being valued
I'll be
higher than casting second Endurance, anything like that, because, well, that's Ancestral Recall under Dauthi Voidwalker
Yeah.
if Jake wanted to.
You'll
The old
be at
casual
7.
5-mana A-Call getting a significant discount under the Douthie Voidwalker.
So now Subtlety is available. So
Will be at
if
4.
Jake goes for like Fury or something, it's less than exciting.
Go.
Can be a huge swing. Subtlety in hand for Del
Trigger,
Pivo.
trigger.
He's happy to just
That's
flash in the
fine. Still
Endurance.
in my end step. I'm gonna
And now we're
terminate
going to see...
Endurance.
Okay, terminate
Yep.
on the Endurance before Del Pivo gets the chance to
Now
attack.
Marco is at 4 here, so this race is still not really favoring Marco here. Marco will have to find either second creature to block this Menace attacker or another dead, something like that, to be able to deal with Grief straight away. Shardless Agent would have been a really good top deck, but with this Chalice, it's one of the worst ones, as well as Violent Outburst is 3 mana, Fire Breathe, 1 creature, that's it.
No, all of the whole team. The whole team.
Well, there's only one creature.
Well, technically speaking, it's still the whole team.
Excuse me.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, just let me get my very tiniest knife out to split that particular hair.
I'll eat 8.
So the endurance now cracking in. Here we go. 8
Okay.
life remaining for Jake Beardsley. Obviously, there is a plan for this grief. You don't just leave yourself dead to it. Oh, going down to 1. Okay, so...
And, yeah, Jake has land, Chalice, mystery card right now, so no real action. Bowmasters are out of the deck
yes,
right now.
all four have been taken out. Yep.
And there's Fury.
And Fury. All right, so that's the plan. That's what we're saying here. That was the plan to deal with the grief, ultimately. Hard cast as well, which isn't bad.
Okay.
And now Beardsley is the one under pressure.
Under pressure, has to find something. Now Marco is thinking, do I want to play around something like Terminate on the Fury and then a dashed Ragavan, for instance? One of these 1-2 punches. It's just 2 lands in hand, so if Marco could see the hand, would for sure attack with both, but obviously perfect information is only available to us.
And Del Pivo doesn't know that Beardsley has taken out all the Bowmasters.
I'll be at
He,
5.
he may suspect that the Bowmasters
Yep.
aren't in.
And did leave it back
good
to
deck.
play around that exact line.
All right. So off the top, Jake Beardsley needs something very special here. Marco Del Pivo on just 1 life. If Beardsley can find a way to deal 1 damage to his opponent, he'll be heading to the semifinals, but not so, Mr. Secretary. We see Del Pivo pick up his first win in the top 8 this Sunday, and we go to Game 4.
And that was a game with Chalice immediately in play with Jake, which is like the worst card for these Cascade decks.
Yes.
And it wasn't even destroyed. It was just played through with other things. So that's got to be a game where Marco is super happy to win.
Ragavan Nimble Pilferer goes down to a dead and gone. And another update about the sideboards here, Corey. Gemstone Caverns comes out. Boseiju gets brought in.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yes. No.
Oh, sorry. Other way around.
Yes.
Boseiju comes out, Gemstone
get
Caverns comes
16.
in.
I'm gonna think for a
But
second.
it still makes sense.
Exactly. Makes a lot of sense. That's always how these decks sideboard play draw because, well, Gemstone Cavern, this is going to be some huge news.
We're getting the Baumeister hot take.
Breaking news here. Gemstone Cavern, much better when you're on the draw than on the play.
Now, Corey, that is impossible to back up. There is no amount of
I
evidence.
had Frank check the numbers.
There's
okay?
there's no amount of evidence that you can present to me that's going to convince me of that case. Certainly not the text on the card itself.
I have heard that reading the card explains the card.
Go ahead.
Let's have a squiz at
No
the
second
hand
land.
of Del Pivo. Oh boy, okay, but he's got that chalice. He's got that chalice.
And this
You're
was
at
a
17?
keep.
Yeah.
This was a keep on 7
Yeah.
on the play with Ragavan. So you know what that was saying. Jake was like, okay, all you have is Dead Gone.
Yeah.
Fire was not in play, so I'm at least going to get 1 treasure. So if Marco had one of the, I believe, 2 or 3 Dead Gones available, then it was going to be a bad scenario if Jake indeed didn't draw land number 2. All of those things happened.
So Jake looked at his opener.
Oh, there's 4, but still. Yeah.
Jake looked at his opener, and he's like, righto, this is a great hand if there's no Dead Gone.
If there's no Dead Gone.
There's
Because
no
it
Dead-
has the Chalice as well.
Yep. And it's got the Ragavan. I can start getting in with that. But as it happens, Marco did have the answer to the turn 1 Ragavan. And so Jake now on the back foot. But he did get to Thoughtseize. He had a look at what Del Pivo was working with, and it wasn't a huge amount.
Okay, there's land 2, and I do see
Chalice.
Douthie,
Okay.
as well as
Douthie.
Fury.
Yeah. Go.
Okay, so now Jake is on the board with the Douthie Voidwalker and a Chalice of the Void on 0. So as this Crashing Footfalls ticks down, it'll almost certainly just be countered by the Chalice.
Yep, and we'll see what kind of answers we have on the other side. It looks like another Crashing Footfall was top decked and a Shardless Agent. So there is only 3 mana 2/2s and stuff that you can suspend to hopefully deal with Chalice later. So Marco is in a really poor spot. That 1 land might be a Boseiju, though, which would help things out
Got me at
drastically.
16, you at 17.
So you can hear there
No,
the
you're
live
good.
totals updated as Marco Del Pivo confirmed to be on 17 life.
That does look like Misty and Boseiju in the middle. A little tricky to
got
see.
good eyes.
Oh, thank you.
You have very good eyes.
2020.
Yeah. Old Eagle Eye Baumeister, they call him.
Sure.
Another suspended Crashing Footfalls. Marco has drawn 2 copies of the namesake card of this deck. I guess not namesake, I shouldn't say that.
Draw.
The marquee card.
Yeah, there we go.
Emblematic card of Temur Rhinos.
So here's Thoughtseize. Jake is going to see the slightly not great news if that was indeed a Boseiju. Yes, it was.
And it was.
So now this is
I'll be at
decent
14.
because
Got Misty,
Boseiju, the whole
Boseiju.
plan for Marco was going to be Boseiju at end step, untap, Shardless Agent, have a good battlefield. Now maybe you hold on to it because second Chalice, it's not like Jake would play it right now if he had it because he can. It would get countered. So there's a lot of thought to waiting.
Actually, yeah. So have a think about this, right?
Yeah.
If you play something like a Blood Moon and your opponent's got to Besage you, you're like, right, I'll just play a second copy of Blood Moon and now I've got a bit of insurance.
Yeah.
You can't do that with the Chalice on 0.
Exactly.
Yeah, really interesting
So
dynamic.
yeah, here's the tap land, recognizing that as well. No need to Besage you right now. Now the one case scenario is if Marco top deck Shardless Agent or Violent Outburst, you're gonna kind of kick yourself, but it's impossible to know.
No.
And,
but you just let this happen. You've got 2 copies of the Crashing Footfalls in the suspend zone. You just wait. You play the waiting game. You're not under a huge amount of pressure.
That's where maybe less experienced players will look back on a game that, let's say Marco top deck Shardless Agent, looks back and be like, I just should have Besaged you. That was a huge punt.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you look at the situation. Did I make the correct plays with the information given to me?
Yeah.
And if yes, you shouldn't be mad about a result because that's the variance you're going to experience in Magic the Gathering and Modern especially.
And honestly, in real life.
There you go.
I'm very serious. Something that Magic has taught me is that it's so easy to look back on decisions you make and categorize them as mistakes, but all you can do at the time is make the best decision available to you with the information that you have. You can't take into account information that you got later on when analyzing past decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so in a situation like this, it's not just a lesson in Magic, it's a lesson in life. When you're analyzing your decision-making, remember the circumstances under which the decision was made.
I love it. TED Talks with Bomb Knight here.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Exit through the gift shop. All right, we've got a Grief now. That one was evoked.
That was evoked, and it looks like we were pitching a Thoughtseize, and there is one of the Undying effects here, either Fang Death or Undying Malice.
2 damage here.
But in response, Fire Ice on the Douthie Voidwalker. And I like this. We sort of characterized the Douthie Voidwalker as not being hugely relevant in this matchup. We've seen its ability to cast Crashing Footfalls to be very relevant.
Yeah, so you can do that.
Douthie choosing Shardless Agent.
I don't think this works. Because it's timing rules. This is at instant speed.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Choose to cast Shardless
No, I
Agent.
don't think you can do that.
Results, I guess, and I take nothing because your last card's Besaging.
I could
maybe we're wrong about that. But
yeah, I could be wrong about that.
I always thought that you had to obey timing.
No, we're going to target the Douthie Voidwalker.
I always thought you had to obey timing restrictions with the card you were casting with the Douthie
I guess because
Voidwalker.
it's still in main phase, it still counts for that.
Wouldn't the stack have to be empty? I don't know.
That's kind of what I would have thought.
That's what I would have thought. But anyway, the Shardless Agent is on the battlefield. Feign Death is the card that was flipped by the Cascade ability. It's targeting the Douthie Voidwalker. Not that it's likely to be hugely relevant here as we pass back over to Del Pivo, who basically plays a land and ships.
Dash Ragavan.
And Ragavan is dashed in, as we're hearing, and now an attack for 8.
Okay.
You'll be at 4.
4. There's the treasure.
Not cast your Wooded Foothills.
Not cast the Wooded Foothills. Not an option, but once again, Jake being very clear. So now we're going to see
14 to 13 to 12 to 4. This is 8.
And again, very clear communication from Jake as he works his way through the life total.
And that's a very important life total because Douthie does have 4 power now and
Wild.
cannot be blocked by the Rhinos.
Yep, so we need we effectively need a dead gone to get rid of it, right?
And that's just a gone. It can't even dead.
It can't be deaded.
Yeah.
It can't be deaded.
Deaded.
Only gone.
Go ahead.
Only
Ragavan,
gone.
turn it. Yep.
All right, Besage you,
That's
as we
gone.
expected,
I'll go
on
grab
the Chalice of the
a
Void.
Blood Crypt tapped.
Okay,
And-
gets the crit.
Jake is able to search up a land thanks to the second part of the Besage's ability.
You'll go to 3.
Del Pivo also going to search up a land here.
Goes into lightning bolt range, but actually now that I look at this list, just no bolts.
No bolts.
Interesting how the mighty have fallen.
Man, Khan liberated, hitting the bench. Lightning bolt not played in a Rakdos deck.
Whatever.
Man.
Bottom 3 cards.
Okay.
I'll cut you right to it. There you go.
All right.
It's right there.
It's right there, says Jake. We'll
So
find
let's
out
see.
if it is.
That's
Needs an
exile
answer
with
to the
void counter.
Douthie Voidwalker.
You're gonna draw. Good games.
I don't think it was there.
And it was not there. Jake Beardsley takes out the game and the match 3-1 against his opponent. Marco Del Pivo going down swinging. But Rakdos Evoke, the most played deck in the tournament, gets through to our semifinals.
Really impressive stuff there from Jake, the best player in Roanoke, Virginia, for sure. Taking it down here. Really huge congratulations to him. I know how much this means to him to have such a huge moment to go play Dom Harvey.
Well, let's hear from the best player from Roanoke, Virginia, right now standing by with William Hall.
Jake Beardsley, at your first Pro Tour, you're still chasing and living that fairy tale ending. You still got the hat on as well.
Yeah.
So I was speaking to you just before this. You think this was a bad matchup for you, yet you managed to win it 3-1. Why do you think it's a bad matchup for you?
So the Temur Rhinos deck is incredibly redundant. They have 4 copies of Violent Outburst, 4 copies of Shardless Agent, so it's harder to pick apart their key cards in general with Thoughtseizes and Griefs, and they have more copies to top deck, even if I do manage to get the Evoke Grief plus Feign Death or Undying Malice on turn 1. So I can pick apart their hand all I want. They can, they're really good at recovering from that sort of thing. Fury helps a lot in the matchup, but it's not my favorite thing to play against, and I know there are a couple teams playing the Rhinos deck specifically because they expected a lot of Evoke going into the weekend.
Yeah, so we're talking about key cards there. What do you think your key card is in this matchup? What do you want to see in your opening hand every game?
So in the first couple games, it's far and away Dalthy Voidwalker. The card can be a little bit awkward for them to answer. They have 4 copies of Fire and Ice and 4 copies of Dead Gone, but they're really pressured to use those on something like a Ragavan on turn 1, and Voidwalker allows me to cast their Crashing Footfalls after they cast it themselves, so I can trade their Rhinos for my own and essentially 1-for-1 them in a way that it's pretty hard to do against them normally. It also is an unblockable threat, so it allows me to clock them if I have something like a turn 1 Grief. It's a fantastic follow-up to that.
Great. Lastly, I want a one-word answer of your feelings right now that you're now in the top 4 of this Pro Tour.
Thrilled.
Thank you very much, Jake.
Great to hear from Jake Beardsley there. A well-deserved win for him in our quarterfinals. We'll be seeing him in the semi-finals. Stick around, everybody. On the other side of this, we're going to preview what's coming up in the semis. And then after that, we're going to get right into the games. We'll be back in just a few moments.